See? All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming down to the Arizonans for Safe Access meeting tonight. It's also, we've got a collaboration of things going on tonight. We've got an update on the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol in Arizona. We also have a Mom Force update. I got a couple of little things to say in a little while. We're going to hear from Carlos Alfaro with the campaign in a little bit. We're also going to hear from Mikel Weisser, formerly of SAFER, and he's going to tell us why he's sticking with the campaign. Thank you, Michael, for coming. My name is Kathy Inman. I'm the Executive Director of Mom Force AZ. Mom Force AZ is an educational organization created basically to promote education, advocacy, and to tell folks about natural solutions to substance abuse issues. We've found so much good information over the last 7 years. I've been a cannabis advocate for those years, and I've just met so many good folks that have improved their lives with cannabis. And I'd like to share that information. I'm here tonight not only to hold a monthly meeting so we can gather and get our thoughts together, but really to support the campaign. I absolutely support the campaign as my organization and as myself, because I believe it makes the most sense for the majority of Arizonans. And that's who I stand for, and that's who I've always stood for. The otherwise law-abiding citizen, the ordinary American, the person that doesn't necessarily want to get into the business, but just doesn't want to have to look in their rearview mirror and be in a panic because they prefer cannabis to alcohol. Alcohol, extremely dangerous. June is National Safety Month, and we know now, according to the National Institute of Health, that cannabis, marijuana, is 114 times safer than alcohol. And you know, we've all seen the bad effects of alcohol in our lives. We all have our stories. Tonight we're going to share some of those stories. And I'm going to share my story with you guys too. And I thought I might kick off with that, because honestly, taking a stand for this campaign has been a rough ride. It's been a rough bunch of years, honestly. I've had a lot of names thrown at me. I've had a lot of accusations. I've had a lot of things happen. But one thing that was the scariest thing, one of the scariest things that ever happened in my life happened about 4 years ago at a normal meeting, and it was alcohol related. And that has been the fodder for many who oppose me and my views to say I have a drinking problem. I'll tell you what, I do have a drinking problem. I can't drink more than one, because when I do, I begin to slur. I begin to act funny. My brain begins to malfunction. You know why? Because alcohol is poison. It's absolutely poison, and we need to treat it like that. And the effects that I've seen of alcohol have been absolutely awful. My father ended up in a wheelchair. He was sad to be in a wheelchair, so he ended up just drinking himself to death and dying at 43. Again, do I have a drinking problem? Yeah, I have a problem with drinking. So I stood up 8 years ago and I said, no more binge drinking overdoses for the 1,800 children a year that go off to college and they don't come home because they had too much to drink, because they were at a party and they didn't know what they had in their hand. 1,800 kids, and that's National Institute of Health statistics, and anyone can go ahead and look that up at our National Institute of Health online. I didn't want a mother to get these calls. I can't imagine sending my child off to school and getting a call that they weren't coming home. So knowing that there was this non-toxic alternative in marijuana, again, National Institute of Health also tells us it's scientifically impossible to overdose from marijuana because it affects our cerebellum, it doesn't affect our brainstem. Opiates affect our brainstem. Alcohol affects our brainstem. That's why I slur after one drink. That's why people like to start silly rumors. But the silliest, most awful thing that happened to me in my story is that I was at a normal meeting. I didn't eat anything. I was 15 pounds lighter. I need to lose those 15 pounds. But I didn't remember to eat dinner. I didn't remember to eat lunch. And I went and I had a margarita, big one of those ones that a big margarita, you know. I was thirsty. It was the middle of the summer. It was hot. It was probably October, but it was hot. I drank it fast, and I lit a toxic cigarette. I used to smoke cigarettes back then. I lit a toxic cigarette, and the next thing I knew, I dropped like a bag of rocks. I blacked out. That was the scariest thing that's ever happened to me personally in my body, because I didn't have control. And that's what happens when kids overdose. Little girls go off to college, they're 100 pounds, and they think they're going to go and dance it up, and they're going to turn over a bottle, and it's going to be fun, it's going to be okay, and they're just going to get drunk and they're going to go home. Well, sometimes they don't go home to their parents again. That's why I stand up for cannabis. That's why I'm here tonight, and that's my alcohol story. Because this can happen. If it could happen to me, as much as I thought I had control of myself, and this could happen to me over a drink and a half with no food. I'm sorry, this could happen to anyone, because I know my body and I know how much I've smoked. I've run normal meetings for many, many years, and I've smoked with the best of them, and I'm not afraid to say it. The fact is, I can smoke and smoke and smoke, and that will not happen to my body, and I know this. So I support this campaign, and I thank the campaign for being here and for being a sensible campaign that has done the polling that will pass in this state. Next, I'm sorry, I wanted to make sure I covered everything. I did want to do a quick campaign, or a quick Law Force update on the debate that we saw the other night, just really quick, because I want to get everything I have to say done before we get Carlos and then Michael up. Yeah, I want to thank J.P. Holyoke, who did an excellent job. If any of you guys were there, he was absolutely wonderful, the chairman of the campaign. Sheila Polk, just to highlight, Sheila Polk doesn't know what Schedule 1 means, doesn't mean that it actually means there's no medicinal value. Because she upheld the values of medical marijuana and said how wonderful, you know, oh yeah, it's doing great things for everybody. However, we shouldn't reclassify, and we shouldn't call this a conversation about criminal justice reform. Well, when we're not having a felony penalty anymore, I say that's criminal justice reform. And so we fight further. I'm sorry, Sheila. Also, Will Humboldt pointed out that the worst problem we have are opiates. Opiates have been on the rise. Heroin use has been on the rise for the last 10 years. I've seen it over and over and over again. Kids coming to me, telling me, my friends are taking heroin. I took my daughter out of high school in Gilbert because kids were taking heroin, and I thought that was crazy. What kind of place did I live in? Let's move her over to Mesa. Well, I just met a graduate from one of the Mesa high schools, and she told me it's spread like wildfire, and all the regular kids are using this. So I feel like the town crier. So now I've submitted, not only have I gone to Sheriff Joe and all that you guys know already, I've finally submitted my first op-ed to the Arizona Republic, and they are reviewing it, and it has all the links that I just spoke of. They also came back and said they would consider the links outside the 200-word boundaries and publish them. So if they do, that's going to be a big step ahead, I believe, for us. Sheila Polk sat there while Will Humboldt pointed out that opiates are our biggest problem. I say Matt Force really needs to take accountability for this, because when our kids are dying from heroin overdoses and alcohol, especially in Yavapai, right, Michael? Yavapai's got the worst alcohol problem with their children. That they are focused on marijuana absolutely infuriates me, because our kids are at risk, our kids are dying while they have this campaign against marijuana. And I've had enough, quite honestly. So before I get any more angry, I'm going to introduce my friend, my new friend, and the political director for the Arizona campaign for 2016. Come on up, Carlos. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Kathy and actually give her a round of applause. Everything that she puts a lot of work into, and it's really, really well done. And it's actually the key to winning our campaign. Like all of you know, I'm sure, having a conversation about cannabis can be a little complicated, but somehow we all manage to get through it. When we're talking with our friends, when we're talking with our family over dinner, we can introduce the subject. And I think a lot of us, I've heard a lot of you speak tonight, meeting you and over other meetings. A lot of you can make good arguments that will bring people to our side and will at least not have them be against it. And this is really going to be our strategy for this state. The Marijuana Policy Project has been doing marijuana policy reform for 20 years. They were the authors of the Colorado campaign, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, and DC. So they came to Arizona not thinking that anything was going to happen. The medical marijuana law passed by, I think, less than 4,000 votes, was it? Or less than 500? 4,400 votes. And so it really didn't look likely that we were going to get anything passed here until 2022 or maybe even later. However, when the poll numbers came back, it looked like we were not only 50-50, but like we were winning. Arizona, a red conservative state, had turned green, or at least green in culture, because it seems like the medical marijuana law has gone so smoothly that the people that are smoking, the people that are consuming and need it, are doing it, and the people that are against it aren't even affected by it. If you go up to the regular person, they don't even know that we have marijuana dispensaries. At least most of them don't know that. And that's a good sign that I like to bring up and say, see, the sky didn't fall, there's not buildings on fire, and we're still doing good. In fact, we opened the market up for hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. I think it was 115 million last year or something like that for medical marijuana. That's jobs, that's revenue, that's economic stimulus. That's exactly what we need. And I come from a conservative standpoint, a libertarian point of view. Let's see, I went to Saguaro High School here in Arizona, and then went to Scottsdale Community College. Didn't really know what to do until I started reading economics, and that's something that really, let me just say it like this. I hadn't read a book in high school. I went through it with Spark Notes, and I did pretty well. But I had never read a book cover to cover until I was at Scottsdale Community College, and I picked up, it's called Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt, where he talks about anything from trade policy to monetary policy to drug policy. And that was really one of the main things that brought me to libertarianism, to conservative ideology, saying, if you're being peaceful, this is the country that you should be left alone. That's your biggest right, in my view. You should be left alone if you're not hurting anybody else. And that's really where I come from. We led Students for Liberty, which was a libertarian club. It grew bigger than the college Republicans and Democrats at the time. We grew from 6 people to 110 members in over a year. We were really active, took over the college Republicans and created this big coalition for libertarian politics. Not only do we want the budget to be balanced, but we also want the government out of our lives. And I think that's a message that's going to resonate here in Arizona. The campaign is really cool. And the reason I'm saying that is because not only do we have conservative-minded people, but we have anywhere from socialist liberals to anarchists to all over the map in the political realm that are coming together and saying, you know what, this is viable policy for Arizona. We have negotiated this for months and months and months, and now we've come to the point where the poll numbers are there, the resources are there, the money and the culture is there. Now it's up to us to get the ground running. I don't want to take too much time, but if I were to point to one of our major goals, it would be culture change. If you guys ever have time on your computers, on Google, type in F.A. Hayek. His name is world-renowned. He's a Nobel Prize economist. He won the Nobel Prize in economics for his price theory. And he was a very big social theorist. He talked about how policy becomes law all the way when it starts from intellectuals. So you have the intellectuals in the universities and in the intellectual circles, and it goes down through the authors and TV and radio, and eventually, once it becomes popular in culture, your views will become policy. That's something that we're doing on the campaign. Not only are we creating groups like Mom Force, and we're supporting them and going to meetings like this, but we're also doing physicians groups, we're doing attorneys groups. The look for the campaign must be professional. Right? Whenever we do a big networking event or something where we're going to go do professional advocacy for the campaign, we really want to promote that, feel of professionalism, and that feel that not only do we care for the people that are consuming cannabis, we care about the issues about people that are against it. And that's what I want to move into, and that's our opposition. Bill Montgomery and Sheila Polk are just tip of the iceberg of what the opposition really looks like. In Florida, for example, they were able to raise over $3 million and defeat our whole effort. We had ads and we had information, and we told people that all over the country this is going to be something that is eventually going to happen and help people, but their fear tactics actually got to most of the populations, and it got to most of the communities there, and they defeated it with the message of, you legalize marijuana, and it will become more accessible to kids. And that's something that I want you to think over. I know as advocates, we just brush that off, and we say, well, it hasn't happened in other states, and a regulated system doesn't really allow for that. But I want you to question yourself and go back and say, what is the best argument for that? And what is the best argument against our initiative, our efforts? And that way, we're going to be a little more ready for what comes in front of us. So what we're planning and what I'm proposing is to have meetings like this all the time. As a resource for parents, as a resource for people that have no experience with cannabis in the past. That's really what we're fighting. We're fighting ignorance. Most people that are educated about cannabis don't have those worries because they know that, for example, marijuana is objectively less harmful than alcohol. Like Kathy said, 118 times less deadly, less harmful than a substance that is so into our culture that we don't even think about it. That's where cannabis should be, really, to the point where nobody really thinks about it because it's less harmful. That's an educated society. That's something that our founding fathers taught us to be. And unfortunately, the opposition is leaning on the fact that a lot of people don't have experience with this and playing into ignorance and playing into fear. That's what we're against, and I'm actually very happy and proud to be leading the campaign that fights against ignorance and fear, right? Fights with education and meetings and actual community coordination. So I want to open it up for any questions that you might have. We have the initiative up here. You can read it. You can sign up if you haven't signed. Michael will probably tell you a little more about going around the state and getting signatures and the more kind of like on-ground effort with that. But if you have any questions on messaging, if you have any questions on how you can get involved more day-to-day on coalitions and on groups, please let me know. I'll tell you this, I'll end with this. We have 3 main talking points. The first one is, we would like marijuana to be legalized so that we can have a system to tax and regulate it, put it behind the counter, and ask for an ID, with the money going to public education and health. That talking point right there won Colorado. It won Alaska, which was the first red state to go green. It won DC, and it's all obviously winning 23 states that now have a regulated marijuana market. 23 states in the Washington, DC district. So, yeah, think about that. The next talking point is, rather than having drug cartels benefit from underground market stuff, we want underground market action. We want a regulated system where legitimate licensed businesses can take over it. And that obviously has happened. And it had millions and millions of dollars. Last time I read was $700 million market in Colorado with over $60 million of tax revenue going exactly to public education and health. You say that to a smart group of people in a room, and at least you got them in the middle. That's been my experience. Of course, we encounter big opposition, but we keep fighting with the facts. So I hope that you will have some questions for me, and that we'll be able to talk afterwards, and I'll get you signed up and registered for the clubs. So thank you.
What's the last talking point?
Yeah, you said 3.
Oh, sorry. Last talking point is the kids argument. Our kids, our communities and kids will be safer by having this regulated system, putting it behind the counter, asking for an ID, and knowing who's buying and who's selling to who. Right now, we have drug dealers. We have. It is no secret that criminal drug cartels control a big part of the underground market. No secret. We live in Arizona. We hear this stuff every day. Immigration is actually the #1 issue in the state, and one of the main talking points is criminal drug cartels are getting here, not only with drugs or other drugs, they're getting here with human trafficking and other illegal activities. So I would just say there's enough evidence out there that if you do a 15-minute Google search and get those 3 talking points correct, most of the people that you're going to be talking to and come in contact with are going to at least be in the middle or coming to our position. So I hope that you will practice this, because if it's not us advocating for this campaign, it's not going to be anybody. It's going to be maybe the media throwing out news stories. In fact, the media loves this stuff. We just had a meeting with the Arizona Republic, and they told us for every news story that you see, people spend about 17 seconds. They read the title, they skim through the story, and then they click on something else because it's the news and you're clicking around. But with a marijuana story, it's over 2 minutes and 47 seconds.
Wow.
From 17 seconds to 2 minutes, almost 3 minutes. which means that they're not only going to do more marijuana stories, but we got to be the people that feeds them, right? If we don't feed the marijuana story craze, the opposition will. And what that looks like, it's marijuana hits kids. Marijuana is going to lead to harder drugs. Stuff